Celtics Stuff Live.
Welcome to Celtics Stuff Live on the CLNS Media Network, the leading online provider of audio and video coverage for the Boston Celtics, who are now in a tie with the Cleveland Cavaliers 2-2. Who'd have thunk it, John? Probably me, because that's how this thing has to roll. It has to go 7 games. That's how people make money. You heard it in the Milwaukee series. A little bit of a resurgence, although it's not really as bad. The Celtics definitely could have finished better at the basket in the last 2 games. Could have definitely played more aggressive in Game 3. They didn't, and now here we are. They're a team, somewhat predictably, a younger team that's better at home.
Yes. A better team at home, a better team that seems to know its way, a better team that when they see the first quarter, second quarter, their eyes don't go, gah! And then all of a sudden you all wonder, who the hell are these guys? They look like a bunch of middle schoolers out there, not knowing who to pass to, what the plan is. I mean, there were long stretches of the game where Al Horford didn't touch the ball on the offensive end. Weird stuff in the first half. It was probably one of the more dispiriting first halves the Celtics have put in all season, I thought.
I mean, almost 70 points. I mean, they're a defensive club. To allow almost 70 points in the first half is, well, it's other than the big, huge loss in Game 3, 70 points allowed in the first half. I mean, those 2 scenarios are some of the worst basketball they've had all year.
No, and it was error after error. I mean, it was error on top of error. I mean, they were, forget the missed dunks. I mean, that gets kind of overplayed, I think, but there was just the types of errors that they were making were just mind-boggling. The types of things that my 6th grade travel team doesn't make. And yet they just were so out of sorts. They played like a young team that had never been in that position before, a young team that hadn't played together before. And I thought really their inexperience and their age showed that first half where, things were going well for Cleveland, sure, but they didn't have that counterpunch. They weren't able to kind of find that kind of base, that solidity that they have at some points and then find a direction. It was really a repeat of Game 3, which was its own private hell. And then,
except they only lost by 9.
4.
Except they only lost by 9. And, it is all about that base. And the base is the defense, and they didn't have it in either game on the road here. But, I mean, honestly, the fact that they only lost by 9, they kept getting really close, and every time they did, Cleveland responded. They had an answer. And the only thing I'll say is, the officiating is the officiating. I don't think none of it's as bad as Milwaukee. I know I kind of teased that earlier, but there was one play that really seemed to swing the game, and that was the almost 4-point play, the should-be 4-point play with Marcus Morris. I think that one would have gotten them close enough where they might have gotten over the hump and they might have gained some confidence and put that Celtics steam charge ahead to close out the game. But the truth is, they didn't get it, and then they didn't have it. And that absolutely was not a foul on Morris. He did not kick his leg out. So clear that Kevin Love essentially hooked his foot and dragged it with him as he went out of bounds. That kind of stuff is frustrating. Sometimes it's more frustrating, though, when ESPN and their announcers say, oh, yeah, look at that, because that was such a clear defensive foul. It's not even funny.
Dude, I could take the next 45 minutes of this show talking about Jeff Van Gundy, Mark Jackson, and that piece of garbage, Mike Breen. I could take that time. I'm not going to do it because nobody wants to hear me talk about the announcing team. But I could absolutely.
You could be wrong about that. You could be wrong about that.
I might come back there then because, oh my God, I'm about ready to blow a gasket with those 3. How they are the broadcasting team of the NBA. The pinnacle of all the games are those 3 idiots. I don't understand, but I'm going to put that aside. I'm going to be okay. Okay. But you're absolutely right. That play where the leg brushes, obviously Love is a foul, no question, but there wasn't some sort of extreme leg flailing out like we saw with Tony Allen and Reggie Miller back in 2005, where that happened. And that was obviously a play. Okay, we all saw it and we knew what was going on. This was like barely even there, and Bill Kennedy blew it. He blew the call. I want to say this, though. I don't think the Celtics got jobbed like they did in Game 3. I thought they got jobbed in Game 3. Game 4, I think there was bad officiating on both sides. I think there were certain calls, though, that really hurt the Celtics. And the one that I'd point to, I mean, you're absolutely right, but it's oddly enough, Kevin Love is involved in this one. The out of bounds at the end there with about 3 minutes to go, where...
Yeah, that was so out of bounds on him. It wasn't even close.
Clearly out of bounds on Love. Clearly. And if that's the Celtics ball, they get the ball back with 3 minutes to go. They at least have a shot at that point, and instead LeBron hits the 3 and then, things get weird. And those are the things, everyone wants to point. I've had this long debate on Twitter about, the game, look at this, look at the statistics. It's not that different. If you watch the games, okay, it matters when and where and the types of calls made. Just like you said, you're absolutely right, Justin. That Kevin Love call, on Morris, that was a pivotal time in that game. That ball, if the 4-point play goes in, where are we? What is the momentum of that? You can't just these plays and possessions and statistics. They work in a macro sense when you look at a large sample size, but individual calls, individual plays, those change momentum. They change the way the game is played. And so you can't look at this kind of larger sense of, they've had so many fouls called and so many free throws. That doesn't give you a true picture. You look at individual situations like that one, that can really tell a tale in terms of how the game's played.
Yeah, it definitely can, and that's kind of the sneaky thing that they do, but at the same time, you gotta finish plays. And there were so many times that the Celtics could have, we know that the officials call with the momentum of the game. That's the one thing there. Like you said, they got jobbed in Game 3, but in Game 4, they never really quite had it. And because they didn't have it, they don't get the benefit of the calls. We've seen it time in and time out. That's the way it's going to be. It's hard to go boo-hoo, poor me on the officiating in a game like Game 4. It really is. And at the same time, you knew this was going to happen. I mean, yes, the timing of the calls, blah, blah, blah. But you knew this was going to happen because of the team that Cleveland is and because they're at home. And I guess the biggest question is Game 5. I know that Game 7 is typically the game where you go, okay, if Cleveland gets to Game 7, then it's all up in the air and then anything could happen. And I think that's definitely true with a young squad like this. But I'm actually more scared of Game 5, to be honest with you, John. That's the one, because if you drop Game 5, it's over. It's totally over. They're not going to go back to Cleveland and win Game 6 in that scenario. They struggle on the road. So you do have to take that home court crowd. They have to take that home court energy. They have to take that undefeated at home record so far in the postseason, and they have to continue it. And I think that they will in Game 5 just because they've had 2 games where, they've really, same reason Cleveland came out and showed in Games 3 and 4. I expect the Celtics to show in Game 5, but it's the one that makes me nervous because if they drop Game 5, it's over. Game 7 is at least still anybody's game.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Game 5 it's the pivotal game of any series. I mean, I think Game 4s for 2-1 series are important, but look, here we are. It's 2-2. It's a best of 3 series at this point. First to win 2 wins, and the Celtics have 2 games at home. So they need to hold home court, just as they've done throughout the playoffs. They need to be able to do that here in this Eastern Conference Finals against the Cleveland Cavaliers. They need to do it. That's just bottom line. They need to play like they can on their home floor. We may have Shane Larkin back. That would be a real plus, I think. But are there enough things the Celtics can take from the last two games that they can bring into Boston. I think there's some things that in terms of Cleveland's matchups, I felt like in the second half, Boston finally started to figure out some ways, some counters, some ways to defend that. I think we see a lot more of Smart on LeBron, and I'm not sure there's a counter for that. I mean, you can switch and all this, but it felt like Boston was finding some ways around that. And I'm sure Lou will try to do what he can do, but I like where the Celtics are going into Game 5. Actually, I thought, after really abysmal, let's say 6 quarters. I mean, talking about the four quarters of Game 1, the first 2 here of Game 3, or excuse me, Game 4. Boston competed in quarters 3 and 4. It wasn't enough. I mean, they really just didn't play hard enough, and
quarter
weren't
3
able to
was
play
pretty strong.
But they were, yeah. I think quarter 4 generally, they were pretty good, and I think if we're going to see a Game 6, I think there's things here Boston can take from Game 4 that they're going to be able to play to Game 6. But you got to get to Game 5. You got to hold home court and put yourself in a position where you can take the lessons of Game 4 and apply them to Game 6 and potentially clinch it.
All right. Well,
but you got to get to Game 5 first.
Yeah. Follow Celtic Stuff Live on Twitter at CSL_tweet live, as well as your host at CSL_Justin. That's me at CSL_Duke. That's him. And the entire CLNS Media Network at CLNS Media. Facebook.com/CLNS fans, and download the CLNS Media app for iOS and Android. Simply search CLNS Media in your app marketplace. And finally, the YouTube channel, youtube.com/CLNS Media for high definition, full length locker room interviews and the Garden Report, the Roundtable, and us, Celtic Stuff Live. John, I think the other thing that we heard about was how Marcus Morris went and met with his brother, was totally embarrassed in Game 3. They watched video together. They prepared. Another pivotal, that's not even a word. Another pivotal moment, or not pivotal moment, but a key in this game was how quickly Morris wound up in foul trouble, especially after doing all that study work. Certainly would have been helpful to the team if he had still been able to be out there. We wind up seeing Marcus Smart playing a decent amount of defense on LeBron, and hopefully in Game 5, and I am betting in Game 5 that this will happen, that Morris stays out of foul trouble and that the team just really kicks it up on defense, because that's the issue here. Offensively, they're still scoring. What they have to do is shut down the Cavs.
It was interesting, kind of in that vein of what you're talking about. I was watching NBA TV, had some pregame stuff before, and Isaiah Thomas was saying, I really liked how Cleveland played in Game 2. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, Boston owned them in that game. But I kind of know what he's saying now after the Game 4. Boston didn't play well for the vast majority of this game. But there were a lot of things that you feel like in terms of how they're defending, how they're, what are the matchups. I felt like there's a lot in the second half there that Boston can take from this game and apply to Game 5. And I think that is probably the bigger tale as you're kind of looking forward here in the next 3 games. There's going to be, adjustments and counters and this and that. But Marcus Morris is a big part of that. 5 fouls really took him out of the game in large part. But I felt like even with the 5 fouls, he wasn't really able to be able to put in the box where he's really effective. When he gets one-on-one on a guy that can't defend him, or he's, the bigger guy in a one-on-one situation, that I don't mind those ISO Morris situations. But sometimes he gets, kind of out of his hand there. Goes way beyond it. And like so many Celtics in the first half, just out of control with his offense. I think we're going to see him kind of rein that in a little bit here in Game 5. Have to. I mean, really, there's no other choice. Everyone needs to kind of rein in their game, figure out what they do well. And I think that he'll stay out of foul trouble. I think the Celtics will be in a much better position to defend, because how many times in this game did we see where, the switches were happening and Rozier was getting switched up on LeBron. I think we saw in the fourth quarter, Celtics kind of figured out a way maybe where they can throw at LeBron here in Game 5 that might be a little bit more effective than what they've been throwing at him so far.
Well, in the first two games, they were excellent, and especially in game one, you saw Horford shadowing in the paint on LeBron, which I loved. He was playing like free safety. They even ran a little bit of zone in those first two games a couple of times, which I think basically Cleveland adjusted, and now it's Boston's turn to adjust. And maybe they did at the end of game 4 here, and that game 5 will start to see that swing the other way. But it really does matter, this hometown crowd. There's no doubt about it. It's a huge factor with the team. And here's something else I want to explore with you, John, or maybe we wait just a couple more minutes. But the Karl Anthony Towns thing, I'm not interested. I am done. It's so funny because we're about to hit the off season when this is all we talk about, right? Like very soon the playoffs will be over and this is all we'll talk about. And then since our last show, not Anthony Davis, but Karl Anthony Towns comes up as a potential trading location. And I can be honest with you, I barely read it. I barely care. It's so bizarre, but I'm really at a point where I know it's going to cost us one of Brown or Tatum, and I'm not interested. I'm flat out not interested. I want to keep those guys so bad. I'm out. I'm
out.
No more trades.
Like Kramer in the contest. I'm out. You know, I mean, I get it. I get what you're saying. I mean, yeah, I'm not really ready to have that chat yet.
No. It's not about not being ready to have the chat. I'm telling you, I have no interest in the chat. Even, okay. I mean, look, the team struggles defensively. Karl Anthony Towns is not a defender. We know that.
They don't struggle defensively. They're the best team.
No, they're struggling right now. That's right. They're the best team in the NBA. They're struggling right now defensively. And he's the worst defender, like one of the worst defenders in the league. I'm not interested. Yeah. I know he's a special talent. I know it'll improve under Brad's tutelage. I get all of that. But the truth is, I don't want to part with one of these young guys.
Dude.
I'm telling you, you don't want to break them up. This is not a Perk and Al Jefferson scenario. You do not want to break these two guys up.
This is definitely not a Perk and Al situation. I mean, this is, we go back to those days. We talked about those days, and these two guys are custom made for today's NBA. I mean, they really are. They fit each other well. One does this well, one does that well. They complement each other in so many ways. I'm not really ready to have the conversation yet. So I don't want to talk about Karl Anthony Towns. I want to talk about a trade. I see value in it. I see, a lot of positives from him being mentored by his, kind of big brother in the NBA, which is Al Horford. I'm not ready to go there. But he's an intriguing prospect. I'll say that. But I think where the Celtics are right now, they have two guys who really are special. And they're still trying to figure it out. And I thought we saw, let's give Jaylen Brown some credit. This is your time. I'm gonna tee it up here for you. So I'm gonna say the good stuff. Right. I'm gonna say some good stuff about Jaylen right now, and then you're gonna kind of take it from there. Jaylen played as badly in the first half, probably as I've ever seen him in 2 years of watching him as a Celtic. He was abysmal. Getting his shot blocked by, Kyle Korver of all people. I mean, just out of control, not with any purpose, fouling, stupid. I mean, just not being present.
He was like grabbing LeBron James like around the waist. Well,
I think that was purposeful, but I know what you're saying.
Of course it was purposeful, but he got caught doing it.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I think he was I felt like he was almost trying to draw the foul there purposely, but anyway. He was so good in the second half. I mean, I think he was the guy, I think, that if they were going to get over the hump, he was the guy that was going to get them there. He was really important in trying to create something in the paint. This is my frustration with tonight's game. Paint touches. There were no paint touches. The ball did not get in the paint nearly enough, especially in the first half. The ball wasn't getting to Horford. Rozier was not going by the slower guy in George Hill and not getting the paint and creating for his team. And that was the real problem. Jaylen Brown, a couple situations, he's posting up on Corver and created enough paint touches to where he was getting some shots, getting some free throws, looking good out there. I mean, I think he was really creating that post paint touch, collapse the defense stuff that the Celtics needed because they weren't getting it from other situations. Smart did it a little bit in the second half, but see, that's the issue, I think, is that the Celtics offense, particularly in the first half, it was perimeter, 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 and not enough in, out, because you need to have a situation where your offense is going north-south. If you're not going north-south, you're in trouble, man. You're not able to get the ball moving, get the defense moving, and get yourself in a situation where you're getting open shots. And I think what Jaylen Brown was doing that second half, man, and I know he's your guy, that was really kind of key in a lot of some of the good stuff that the Celtics offense was doing in the second half.
All right, my rebuttal right after this. If you wear contacts, then you know how annoying it is to make people wait for your take. If you wear contacts, then you know how annoying it is to get a prescription year after year just to be able to buy more contacts. Simple Contacts is changing all of that by using technology to make renewing your prescription and buying contacts super, well, simple. And here's how it works. Using your phone or computer, you can take the Simple Contacts vision test in 5 minutes, literally anywhere. And a real doctor will review your test in 24 hours, and he just writes you a new prescription right there. Boom, a fresh supply of your brand new lenses on the way to your door. No more appointments, no more waiting rooms, no more overpaying. Simple Contacts brings the doctor's office to wherever you are, whenever you need it. And I'll be honest with you, I've slept one night at home in the last 7 days. If I was out of contacts, I would need this. And that's what happened to me just a month ago. I needed to get contacts. I didn't have time to schedule an appointment. I would have had to reschedule it. Too much work on the road. Sat down at the laptop, took the vision test from 10 feet away, and there I was, off and running. And Simple Contacts offers every brand of lenses. The prices are unbeatable. The prescription is just $20, and the contact lens prices are super competitive. Shipping is free, and best of all, our listeners get $30 off their first Simple Contacts order. So to save $30 on your lenses, just go to simplecontacts.com/CSL18 or enter the code CSL18 at checkout. I do have to mention, though, that this isn't a replacement for your periodic full eye health exam. You still need those occasionally, but it is the most convenient way to renew a prescription and reorder your contacts, even if your vision hasn't changed. Again, check out Simple Contacts and get $30 off by going to simplecontacts.com/CSL18 or just enter the code CSL18 at checkout. Give it a try and thank me later. All right, you guys can thank me now because here's my reply to John. John, while I agree, Jaylen Brown was awesome in the second half, made up for all the first half flub-ups, definitely attacked the basket, finished with 25 points, leads the team once again, really does generate some amazing offense. Hitting the three-pointer, going inside, a little bit more control, although I will say he was out of control in the first half, definitely some moments there. But the issue in this game wasn't scoring, even in the first half. It was defense. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe there's a point to be made here about had they fed the ball inside, they would have gained some confidence. They might have slowed the game down. Maybe there would have been some timeouts, and they would have collected themselves, for defensive stops because they were rattling Cleveland's cage because Cleveland couldn't stop them. There is an element of that in the game where if you're unable to get stops, it starts to affect your confidence on offense. And if you get the offense and it's coming easy, you feel like you can gamble a little bit on defense, and then you wind up actually playing better. I get that. And it definitely does happen in this league time and time again. And as we said with the officiating, if you seem to have it together and you're playing really strong and you're finishing strong, the officials tend to sense that you have your act together and that you're playing well. So, yes, all of it does come together, but ultimately it's the defense that killed them. You can't allow 68 points and a half and expect to win a game. I mean, look at the big difference there. They finish by allowing, 111 points? 111 points. So they only allowed 43 in the second half after allowing 68 in the first half. 43, that's game pace for 86 points. that thing's a winner walking away every single day of the week if you do that in the first and the second half. And to your point about, somebody saying Cleveland played the best game in game 2, hopefully that's what the Celtics did in game 4, and they take that 43-point second half and carry it right into game 5 and close it down on defense at home.
Man, I hope so. I agree with you wholeheartedly. The defense was a complete S show. Okay, it was all right. I'll say it was a SHIT
Dude, the
show.
Sunglasses are killing me. I just noticed. This has got to be the video clip.
It was a shit show because, they're glasses. I'm sorry. Guys,
dude,
listen.
We haven't had a show like this in a long time where we just turned into total idiots. Laugh fest.
We've been doing this show for a dozen years, okay? It's like we used to do these shows all the time with this post-game podcast without the video, and it really messes your mojo, just saying. Listen, here's the thing. Defensively, right? I'm trying to recoup.
Those are your green-colored glasses. I can't even
stand
Celtics.
They're Celtics. I got them. I went to a game. One of my first games I went to, WLBI 56.
Oh, dude.
That was the old team the old station that used to broadcast back when it was Gil Santos and Kuzi. Just showing my bona fides. Anyway, defense. I think that the defense thing, though, if they are able to just Justin's still losing it.
It's a good thing I'm on mute. I'm dying over here.
If the Celtics, Jesus, this is terrible.
Defense, you can do this. You can do it.
Do it.
You can do it.
You can do it all night long, yeah. So, I gotta stop looking at the screen. The Celtics defense.
Oh, man. Oh, we got the giggles. The Celtics defense was atrocious in the Oh, man. This turned into an outtake. Oh, man. We can't air this.
We can't.
Oh, dude.
All right.
Pull it together. You got it. Lock in.
All right. I gotta change the video. All right. I can't look at you because if I laugh. All right. The Celtics defense, right? So here's the issue, right? They were able. How many times did Marcus Smart get switched up on Rozier? Or excuse me. Rozier and Marcus Smart got switched up, and so you got LeBron on Rozier. Killer. All game 3, all game 4 until the end. Celtics found a way to kind of made Rozier kind of tag the guy, and then they kind of ignored the switch. I think that's the situation. That's what they got to do in game 4. Game 5. They got to find a way to take what they learned in game 4 and apply that here. Now, maybe Cleveland's looking for that, but maybe if they're not expecting it, if they don't know what's coming all the time, they're going to be able to kind of, it's not going to be an automatic. And that's what the problem is what's happening is LeBron's smart enough. He sees exactly where Rozier is. He seeks out that guy, screen roll, gets matched up on whoever that is, sets the screen, ends up on Rozier, and then it's 2 points over and over and over and over again for game 3 and game 4. Can't happen in game 5, can't happen in game 6. Take that away. I think the Celtics are going to be in a much better situation. I'm just, I think, you see a guy like J.R. Smith shoot 3 for 6. Those are the types of things that were killing the Celtics in this game. Basically, being unable to kind of free float and allow that kind of free safety of Al Horford. I think you're going to see the Celtics go back to the defense that kind of worked for them, but without the constant switching in situations that were obviously disadvantageous for them, which in this game, I think we saw over and over and over again. That ended up really Rozier on LeBron James. If they can avoid that, they're going to be fine defensively.
Yeah, you're right. They weren't switching smart. And everything seems like it's a switch, or everything can be a switch. But here's the thing that kills me too. Every time the Celtics start to lose a game, all of a sudden the Twitterverse goes, yeah, can you just imagine next year with Kyrie and Hayward? Like, it's the go-to move, right? And I'm kind of like, I want to imagine this year with those guys acting like veterans on the road. Cause that's really the issue. We talk about the defense and, obviously just plug that big time that the team needs to figure out how to play that defense again. But the thing is they're an amazing home team, right? They're undefeated at home in the postseason. Even the Cavaliers have one loss at home. But the Celtics are undefeated at home. What is it that makes it so that when they're on the road, all of a sudden they don't know how to play defense, and when they're at home, they're locked down? I mean, I get it. We got one good half of good defensive basketball on the road against Cleveland in quarters 3 and 4 of Game 4, but for the most part, it's like they forget how to do it.
I think it's the age and the youth of the team. I mean, I think that's really their problem, the inexperience. That was, I think.
Do you think they need the crowd lift? I mean, is that what it is?
Yes,
the crowds?
Yes.
Like without that, they just don't dig deep on defense? Because, see, I would think that from an effort standpoint, but I'm not so sure that there was a lack of effort in this game, in Game 4.
No.
I think the issue was rotations and all that. And so I don't understand how the home crowd translates to playing smarter. I do understand how the home crowd translates to playing with more energy and more hustle and more effort. But when the effort and the hustle's there, I really don't understand how the home crowd or being at home impacts their defensive abilities.
I think it's focus. I think focus is the main concern. I think there were a lot of blown assignments that we saw here in Game 4. I think the Celtics were, in particular in the first half, I should say, the Celtics were in a situation where they were, the inexperience in the crowd, and they're hearing those things, and the offense isn't working the way they want it to. They're just not fluid. They're not comfortable. And the Cleveland crowd and the team, the Cavaliers, they're doing everything they can to take them out of that comfort zone. And they did it very successfully in the first half. They just looked so uncomfortable offensively. Probably more so than defensively. I think it's perhaps easier to see. You see blown assignments on defense. It's obvious what's going on. But offense, I think, is where it's easier to see where the chemistry or where that kind of flow as a team is evident or not. And I think that's where we saw the team was disjointed. They were taking quick threes. They weren't, moving the ball. They weren't kind of going in and out. They weren't doing the paint touches. Al Horford went long stretches this game where he wasn't touching the ball. That, to me, is the biggest red flag going. He's their best player. Clearly, unquestionably, their best guy and their best playmaker. And to not have him touching the ball and creating opportunities for his teammates is a huge issue. I mean, it almost seemed like they were going away from him and trying to avoid giving him the ball in stretches. I don't understand that. I don't know what that's about, but I think they kind of came back away from that in the third and fourth quarter. They got to find themselves again offensively. And I think if they do, it will help them. But defensively is where you have to kind of make your bones on the road. You have to be able to say, we're tougher than them, we're stronger than them, we're going to be more focused than the team we're playing. And clearly in Game 3 and clearly in the first half of Game 4, they were not that team.
Yeah, and the thing I love about Al Horford is he bangs around. Like, he is really aggressive in the paint to get his shot off. It's really, he is much more physical in the postseason than he is during the regular season. There are just stretches when they feed him in the post, and he's so good at knowing whether or not he's going to be able to get that little edge, get around the corner, get the fade away. He knows when it's time to pass because he's not going to be able to work his offense in the post. It's not a black hole, but a lot of times he can muscle it. Speaking of muscling, the one little gripe I have in this game was how many times, you saw LeBron just push off with the arm, charge with the shoulder, and push off with the arm again. And it's not light stuff. Like, I definitely saw even Corver on a couple of times. He would put the arm out and create a little space. And to me, that's playoff basketball offensively. But when LeBron literally pushes off with his right arm, slams with the shoulder, and then pushes off again on his way to the paint, that to me, you hear people all the time talk about, well, LeBron's the greatest because of that athleticism and that strength. And I'm like, yeah, but LeBron whines every time he doesn't get a call, and then he gets away with, I mean, we've documented on this show several times the complaints about the traveling, but the traveling doesn't bother me as much as the pushing off and the shoulder. Like, a lot of times those are clear offensive fouls to me that I'm just like, you're taking a guy who already has such an amazing physical advantage, and you're allowing him to overuse that and sort of skirt the rule a little bit. And maybe if it was just one push off, I'd be like, whatever. And, maybe if it was one shoulder, I'd be like, whatever. Maybe if it was one shoulder and the shoulder was in the post, I'd be like, whatever. But he's kind of doing these post moves from the perimeter to get to the post, and that's kind of what irritates me about that getting allowed in the games.
No question. I mean, that's what he does. And then on the other end, you had the Celtics young guys, and Brown and Tatum were getting held and pushed and shoved and everything else. No calls, obviously. They're letting that stuff go, which, that's the playoffs. And there is some of that you have to accept and move on from. But it's those types of calls that the Celtics weren't getting, obviously, and the Celtics players were not adjusting to. And there was more physicality, and yet you'd see touch fouls, like obviously the 3-pointer that Morris made. It should have been a 4-point play. It's that type of inconsistency that really makes it difficult for NBA players to do what they do, to be professionals and to understand how the game's played. Yes, everyone's looking for an edge. Yes, you're trying to find a way to get that much over what the other team's doing, or the guy who's guarding you, what they're doing. But there is an obvious sense where, how is this game being called, and what is the kind of baseline at which what I can get away with and what can I get away with. And I felt like LeBron was getting away with whatever he needed to do, and not so much on the Celtics side of things.
All right, so looking to Game 5, one of the things the Celtics did in the second half that seemed to be beneficial to them was they went a little bit bigger, and they've really set the tone of going small the entire series. I think Cleveland in Game 1 made the mistake of matching that small lineup, and since then they really haven't. Do you expect Morris to stay in that starting lineup? Because we know he's statistically great against LeBron, but he's struggled the last 2 games, but they're going back home. Do you think they'll stay small, or do you think they're going to insert Baines back into the starting lineup and maybe go a little bit bigger in Game 5?
I think they will go big. I think they will. I think they got to match, Tristan Thompson. I think you try to bring the energy to them right off, and then you have a situation where, one of those guys, whether it's Brown, Smart, it's going to be Brown or Tatum that's going to sit. I think Morris is the guy you sit. I think you bring him off the bench. You let Brown kind of start him. Let him get warmed up, then bring Morris in to guard LeBron for the rest of his run after you sit Baines, and then kind of start from there to build your rotation. I think the issue is that, they're kind of going Baines or Horford, and then at times they're going Baines and Horford at the end of the, kind of end of the first, end of the third. I'd like to see them, kind of do that a little bit earlier, kind of start off the game with that, maybe go with a little less offense, but a little bit more defense, and try to make it a little bit more difficult. Force the team to make their jump shots. I mean, that's really what Baines, having him in there, does. The other thing that does too is it creates much more of those mismatches where they switch and then Baines is matched up with the guard. I think in the Celtics case, when it's on the offensive end, that also creates mismatches. I need Horford creating the pick and pop. I need Baines kind of rolling, but more importantly, Rozier has got to go to the basket. That's like I think that was the biggest issue here in Game 3 and Game 4. They need their point guards going to the basket, trying to create situations at the rim. I don't care if they miss the dunk. I don't care if they miss layups.
Especially if they're going to be small.
They've got to do it.
Especially if they're going to be small. That's what that whole thing is about. Spacing the floor and allowing the cutters and the driving attacks to the rim. And they weren't doing it. I definitely want to see Baines. Rebounding was a killer. An absolute killer for the Celtics in Game 4. They got out-rebounded by 10 rebounds. They didn't even clear 40 boards in the game, 37-47, and that's really some work's got to be done on the glass. They had the same amount of offensive rebounds, but they had less defensive rebounds, and so that means that they've got to figure out how they limit those second chance points. I mean, shooting percentage is one thing, but just can't get killed on the glass like that. They've got to be able to own it. And it seems like a guy like Tristan Thompson just dominates this team. Almost had a double-double in the first half, 10 points, 8 rebounds. Certainly something that the Celtics have to check in the first half of Game 5. That's why I think they go big. I don't think they finish big by any means. I think they will actually finish small like they always do and really should do that. But I'd like to see them start big again and see if they can't. I mean, they dug 2 holes in the, 10-point deficits very quickly in games 3 and 4 in the first quarter. And, you can dig yourself out during the regular season and you've got those comebacks and they're great at coming back and I get that. But you can just only do that so many times. And definitely once you're in the Eastern Conference Finals, you're not going to be able to get away with it very much at all.
Yeah. Well, and especially on a LeBron-led team. LeBron, he's really good. I don't know if, just this just in, LeBron is good. He does so many things well for this team and he's such a freak of nature. We talked in the last game and I said, how LeBron, it seemed like he had a lot of quit in him. How it seemed like he wasn't going to the lane as quickly. I don't know if that's really changed, honestly. I felt like, a lot of what his stuff has been based off post-ups on Rozier, which doesn't really show anything. I mean, he certainly had some spectacular plays, but he's not the guy he was 5-6 years ago. He's not the guy knifing the lane, throwing down hammers on everybody in his way. That's not LeBron James anymore. So, I still think while he's hit some mid-range jumpers, he's hit some long jumpers, in Game 2, Game 3, Game 4. I like the odds in that. I like where that's headed. I know water finds its level. I know he's not going to continue to hit those. I think the real issue is how do you get Rozier free? You got to get him going, and feeling better about himself because right now he seems kind of lost in himself. He still was 16, 6, and 11. I mean, he had a great game in terms of the numbers.
Body language.
But I think the issue is
body language.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Body language indicates that there's an issue there. We need him to keep his head up and just continue to attack with confidence. Mm-hmm. And I do think LeBron got a little bit in his head there. So hopefully with a couple of days off, they'll be able to pull that together. They'll be able to help him get that confidence and go back out on the floor and take Game 5. Would love to see him take Game 5 and Game 6 and close it out, but I can pretty much assure you this puppy is going 7 if the Celtics walk away with Game 5. So we'll be back, and it'll still be wrapping up the Cleveland series in the Eastern Conference Finals, I believe, before we have another show. So this broadcast will be available on demand on the CLNS Media mobile app. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at CSL_Justin and at CSL_Duke. A heartfelt thank you to everybody for tuning in. And remember that you can help support the show by subscribing to Celtic Stuff Live on iTunes and Stitcher. We'd love it if you gave us a rating and a review because your feedback is important to the show. For staff writer Samuel Elias, executive producer Larry H. Russell, the founder of CLNS Media, Nick Gelso, and my co-host John Duke, I'm Justin Poulin. Thank you for listening to another edition of Celtic Stuff Live.
Mike Breen sucks.
Celtic Stuff Live.